hello again. Yeah, little bit more of a ditty about the Carl Jung that I've just uploaded about. I gave you a little snippet, but I've got a 20. This is not my video. This is from. Let me see, because I like to give a heads up to the people. It's called Eternalized. So heads up to Eternalized. Enzo, will you be quiet for 2 minutes? Eternalized. Go check the channel out. Another very insightful, interesting channel. Enzo, please give it a rest. He's on this cat out there. He won't leave it alone. So heads up to Eternalized, and yeah, give him a listen as well. Like I said, Third Eye Drops, amazing channel. Eternalized, amazing channel. You know, their knowledge and their insight into things, mind blowing. So yeah, heads up to both of them. I urge you both to urge you to subscribe to both channels and give them a good listen, because they can explain things so much better than I can, because I'm still getting a handle on it. So this is 28 minutes long, but let's give it a listen and see if it will help you. Will you give it a rest, mate? Enzo, enough now, please. Just give me a second. Good grief, dog. Just give it a bloody rest, will you, mate? Barking at every bloody thing that walks past. Stop it now. Goodness sake. Just behave yourself, mate. You're on it all the time. You're in that bloody cat. It's just a cat, mate. Goodness sake. Enzo, give it a rest. I'm sorry. Oh, he's on that cat all the time. Right, where were we? Okay, so sorry. Please give it a rest. Enzo! 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 Get down! Now come and sit down. Now that's enough now, boy. Come on, behave yourself. Right, let's try again. Ready?
Never do human beings speculate more or have more opinions than about things which they do not understand. From his childhood, Carl Jung experienced strange and seemingly unexplainable phenomena. He feared that he was going mad and went on the quest to discover what they meant. I saw yellow waves, swimming rubble, and the death of countless thousands. 2 weeks passed, then the vision returned, still more violent than before, and an inner voice spoke. Look at it. It is completely real, and it will come to pass. You cannot doubt this. Jung had these vivid visions just before the First World War broke out. When this happened, he was sure that no schizophrenia was threatening him. He understood that his dreams and visions came to him from the subsoil of the collective unconscious. For Jung, the pressing question was, how are such meaningful events, not linked by any apparent causal chains, possible? What does this say about the physical universe? These were surprising juxtapositions that scientific rationality could not adequately explain. As a youth, Jung not only experienced unusual visions, but also events that could not be explained in any manner. During the summer holidays, Jung was studying his textbooks and heard a sound like a pistol shot. He rushed to the room and saw that a solid table had split from the rim to beyond the center. Some 2 weeks later, he heard another sound. This time he saw that inside a cupboard, the bread knife, which had been used shortly before, had been snapped off in several pieces. Jung finished his medical studies and became a psychiatrist. During this time, he attended seances for communicating with the dead, and had an interest in parapsychology and the occult, mainly due to his own personal experiences. This formed the basis of his medical dissertation, published in 1902, entitled On the Psychology and Pathology of So-Called Occult Phenomena, a Psychiatric Study. On one occasion, Jung was having a conversation with Freud about parapsychology. Freud, in his materialism, rejected most of Jung's questions as nonsensical. Jung had a strange sensation, as if his diaphragm were made of iron and were becoming red hot. At that moment, there was a loud noise in the bookcase, which stood right next to them, that both of them stood up in alarm, fearing the thing was going to topple over them. Jung told him, that is an example of so-called catalytic exteriorization phenomenon. Freud replied that it was sheer bosh. Jung replied that it was not. and to prove his point, he predicted that in a moment there will be another such loud noise. Another detonation went off in the bookcase. Jung wrote, "To this day I do not know what gave me this certainty, but I know beyond all doubt that the report would come again, for it only stared aghast at me. I do not know what was in his mind or what his look meant."
So we're going to get adverts.
Many people who want to release money from...
I do not know what was in his mind or what his look meant. In 1928, when Jung was drawing the mandalas present in his Red Book, the sinologist Richard Wilhelm sent him a copy of The Secret of the Golden Flower, a Taoist alchemical book of life that teaches an ancient Chinese meditation practice for achieving wholeness. Jung was struck by the parallelism between the Chinese mandala and the one he was working on, and he immediately devoured the book. In remembrance of this event, he wrote under his mandala, "In 1928, when I was painting this picture showing the golden, well-fortified castle, Richard Wilhelm in Frankfurt sent me the 1,000-year-old Chinese text on the yellow castle, the germ of the immortal body." This was a decisive point in Jung's life, where his writings shifted to a focus on the psychological significance of alchemy. He wrote that, "From Wilhelm, the spark leapt across and kindled a light that was to become for me one of the most significant events of my life. Indeed, I feel myself so very much enriched by him that it seems to me as if I had received more from him than from any other man." Jung was particularly struck by the drawing of a yogi with 5 human figures growing out of the top of his head, and 5 more figures growing out of the top of each of the heads. The picture, thought Jung, portrays the spiritual state of the yogi who is about to rid himself of his many egos and pass into the more complete, objective state of the self. Jung coined the term synchronicity and mentions it publicly for the first time in 1930 in his memorial address for Richard Wilhelm, who also translated the I Ching, or Book of Changes. He referred to it as a peculiar principle active in the world, so that things happen together somehow and behave as if they were the same, and yet for us they are not. Jung equated it with the Chinese concept of Tao, the union of opposites from the complementary pairs of yin and yang. It is based on the oneness of man and the surrounding cosmos. This is akin to the alchemical credo, as above, so below, referring to the inner world and outer world, the psyche and matter being one and the same. The aim of the Taoist sage is to live in harmony with the Tao, and thereby avoiding falling into one extreme or the other. This is, in fact, the goal of Jungian psychology, the balance of opposites. Consciousness and the unconscious is aligning the ego to the self as center of the personality. Here, synchronicity plays a vital role. There's no linear evolution for individuation, self-realization. There's only a circumambulation, the circling around, in which everything is related to the center. This is represented by the symbol of the mandala. For Jung, finding one's own mandala symbol is crucial for the development of the self. For this circular movement to take place, the mandala must have a symbol, such as the sun, a castle, or a golden flower in its center. It is a visual image of the divine pattern, a manifestation of the self.
Mandala.
The end result is the alchemical procedure Mysterium Conjunctionis, which is also the title of Jung's last great work. The opposite sides of life are united in a holy marriage. There's a heightening and clearness of consciousness and a deepening sense of unity of being. Jung comments that Atman, Tao, and Christ are different cultural symbols for wholeness that correlate the inner self with the animating principle of the cosmos. It is no longer you who live, it lives you. The oracle of the I Ching played an important role in developing his idea of synchronicity. He used it with patients in psychotherapy and could remember a great deal of meaningful answers and unusual psychological insights. For instance, he recalls the story of a patient suffering from a mother complex who feared his prospective marriage partner might be domineering. Jung opened the I Ching and it showed the hexagram 44, entitled Coming to Meet, which stated, "The maiden is powerful, one should not marry such a maiden." Jung's experiments demonstrated that there are meaningful connections between the psychic realm and the physical world. He wrote, "For more than 30 years, I have interested myself in this oracle technique, or method of exploring the unconscious, for it has seemed to me of uncommon significance. It relates to a certain curious principle that I have termed synchronicity, a concept that formulates a point of view diametrically opposed to that of causality.
Ignore it.
Since the latter is a merely statistical truth and not absolute, it is a sort of working hypothesis of how events evolve one out of another, whereas synchronicity takes the coincidence of events in space and time as meaning something more than mere chance."
Pay close attention to this. Energy flows to where attention goes. If you are focusing...
Takes the coincidence of events in space and time as meaning something more than mere chance. Causality is the way we explain the link between two successive events. The course of striking a billiard ball with a cue leads to the effect of the ball moving. Synchronicity, however, is a meaningful coincidence of outer and inner events that cannot be causally linked. The emphasis lies on the word meaningful. It occurs when an inwardly perceived event, dream, vision, premonition, thought, or mood, is seen to have a correspondence in external reality. The inner image has come true. The inner world and the outer world coincide, bringing meaning to your life. Synchronicity derives from the Greek prefix syn, together, and the word chronos, time. It means existing or happening at the same time. The word coincidence implies various incidents happening together. However, a synchronicity is not a typical coincidence, but rather a meaningful coincidence of two or more events. The problem of synchronicity had puzzled Jung for a long time. When he was investigating the phenomena of the collective unconscious, he kept on coming across coincidences that were connected so meaningfully that they broke all statistical probabilities. We cannot imagine events that are connected non-causally and are capable of a non-causal explanation, but that does not mean that such events do not exist. The Nobel Prize-winning physicist Wolfgang Pauli sought therapy from Carl Jung and shared many of his dreams. A prominent quantum physicist who happened to have complex dreams was an extraordinary find. After he no longer was a patient, he would keep up his correspondence with Jung. This is documented in the book Atom and Archetype, which feature the Pauli-Jung letters. Through their joint effort, they would come to see synchronicity as an acausal principle that transcends space, time, and causality. It took nearly 20 years for them to reach the point of publishing their groundbreaking controversial ideas. In 1952, Jung and Pauli published a joint volume, The Interpretation of Nature and the Psyche. Later, Jung's part, Synchronicity and Acausal Connecting Principle, would be published in Volume 8 of his collected works. He wrote, "As a psychiatrist and psychotherapist, I've often come up against the phenomena in question and could convince myself how much these inner experiences meant to my patients. In most cases, they were things which people do not talk about for fear of exposing themselves to thoughtless ridicule. I was amazed to see how many people have had experiences of this kind and how carefully the secret was guarded." Jung did not have the necessary means to conduct scientific experiments on synchronicity. He refers to the extrasensory perception experiments of J.B. Rhine, who founded parapsychology as a branch of psychology. The experiments show evidence for acausal combinations of events, where chance concurrence represents a degree of improbability that would have to be expressed by an astronomical figure. It goes beyond the scope of chance and probability. For instance, in a card experiment consisting of 25 cards with 5 different signs, the subject is separated by a screen from the experimenter and had to try to guess the cards 800 times. One young man, who in numerous experiments scored an average of 10 hits for every 25 cards, double the probable number, once guessed all 25 cards correctly, which gives a probability of around 1 in 298 quadrillion. Jung does not seek a complete description and explanation of these complicated phenomena, but to open an obscure field which is philosophically of the greatest importance. His interest in this problem is not merely scientific, but most importantly, he seeks to delve into the human soul. Jung attempts to account for synchronistic events primarily in terms of his concept of archetype, which are patterns of instinctual behavior responsible for the organization of unconscious psychic processes. Archetypes constitute the structure of the collective unconscious, which represents a psyche that is identical in all individuals and contains the images of all creation. It is the master pattern of life. The archetypes arrange the psychic material and produce meaningful patterns in the physical world. They cannot be directly perceived or represented, in contrast to the perceptible psychic phenomena. On account of its irrepresentable nature, Jung has called it psychoid, soul-like, which refers to the relationship between a person's psyche and the physical world beyond that person's body. We find ourselves with a factor that has nothing to do with brain activity, but rather with meaningful patterns in our personal life. Meaningful coincidences rest on an archetypal foundation. Synchronicity is the deepest layer of archetypal reality, where psyche and matter collide and become indistinguishable. This unitary dimension to all experience is the alchemical notion of the unus mundus, the one world. Jung writes, if mandala symbolism is the psychological equivalent of the unus mundus, then synchronicity is its parapsychological equivalent. Psychological life is an expression of nature. In this case, we have to suppose a knowledge prior to all consciousness. Synchronistic phenomena are thought to arise from activations of this level of reality. There seems to be an a priori, causally inexplicable knowledge of a situation which at the time is unknowable. In therapy, seeing one person as radically separate from another is limiting. It is the field that connects and includes the two participants that is transformative. The unconscious communications that link both partners may usefully be described as emerging out of the psychoid realm, because it transcends limited perceptions of analyst and patient possessing separate, encapsulated psyches. It is particularly in the heightened tension generated by such a field that synchronistic events tend to occur. The psychic life is fundamentally a shared unitary realm. The fullness of the self is the pleroma, the place where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. It is the idea that everything that will happen has already happened. That is the magic of synchronicity.
Hey guys, how's it going? I know a lot of people, and probably a lot of you, wonder how you can get closer to God and how you...
Everything that will happen has already happened. That is the magic of synchronicity. Jung tells us a story about the 19th century French poet Émile Deschamps, who was given a piece of plum pudding by so-called Monsieur du Forgibu. 10 years later, he discovered another plum pudding in a Paris restaurant and asked if he could have a piece. It turned out, however, that the plum pudding was already ordered by Du Forgibu. Many years afterwards, Deschamps was invited to partake of a plum pudding as a special rarity. While he was eating it, he remarked that the only thing lacking was Du Forgibu. At that moment, the door opened, and an old man in the last stages of disorientation walked in. Du Forgibu, who had got hold of the wrong address and burst in on the party by mistake. Jung writes about what seems to be a synchronistic event. On April 1, 1949, I made a note in the morning of an inscription containing a figure that was half man and half fish. There was fish for lunch. Somebody mentioned the custom of making an April fish of someone. In the afternoon, a former patient of mine, whom I had not seen for months, showed me some impressive pictures of fish. In the evening, I was shown a piece of embroidery with sea monsters and fishes in it. The next morning, I saw a former patient who was visiting me for the first time in 10 years. She had dreamed of a large fish the night before. A few months later, when I was using this series for a larger work and had just finished writing it down, I walked over to a spot by the lake in front of the house, where I had already been several times that morning. This time, a fish a foot long lay on the seawall. Since no one else was present, I have no idea how the fish could have got there. When coincidences pile up in this way, one cannot help being impressed by them. However, Jung had his doubts on it being a synchronicity, for there was no interaction with the inner world. He says it might well be the extremely improbable chance grouping of 6 events, the 7th event occurring months later. Jung also cautions that synchronicity can be misused or misinterpreted in a pathological way. People may be carried away and start to see every event as meaningful. Jung had already commented on this relation to situations where patients, particularly schizophrenics, interpret events as having a special reference to them. He wrote in a letter, "I have often found that synchronistic experiences were interpreted by schizophrenics as delusions. Since archetypal situations are not uncommon in schizophrenia, we must also suppose that corresponding synchronistic phenomena will occur which follow exactly the same course as with so-called normal persons. The schizophrenic's interpretation is morbidly narrow because it is mostly restricted to the intentions of other people and to his own ego importance. We must endeavor to find out what the unconscious thinks and adjust our attitude accordingly. Thus, the synchronistic effect should be understood not as psychotic, but as a normal phenomenon." On one occasion, Jung and the members of a seminar he was conducting on dream analysis were discussing the symbol of the bull god in relation to the dream of an announcent. Unaware of the discussions of the seminar group, the announcent spent several days making a picture of a bull with the disk of the sun between its horns. On another occasion, Jung wrote, "For instance, I walk with a woman patient in a wood. She tells me about the first dream in her life that had made an everlasting impression on her. She had seen a spectral fox coming down the stairs in her parental home. At this moment, a real fox comes out of the trees not 40 yards away and walks quietly on the path ahead of us for several minutes. The animal behaves as if it were a partner in the human situation. The fox is the symbol of instinctive cleverness, which told the woman to forget about her hesitations and to conquer her intellectual blocks by trusting her instinctive wisdom, which will show her the right way." Jung gives us another example appropriate to synchronicity. "I remember the story of a student friend whose father had promised him a trip to Spain if he passed his final examinations satisfactorily. My friend thereupon dreamed that he was walking through a Spanish city. The street led to a square where there was a Gothic cathedral. He then turned right around a corner into another street. There he was met by an elegant carriage drawn by 2 cream-colored horses. Then he woke up. He told us about the dream as we were sitting round a table drinking beer. Shortly afterward, having successfully passed his examinations, he went to Spain, and there, in one of the streets, he recognized the city of his dream. He found the square and the cathedral, which exactly corresponded to the dream image. He wanted to go straight to the cathedral, but then he remembered that in the dream he had turned right at the corner into another street. He was curious to find out whether his dream would be corroborated further. Hardly had he turned the corner when he saw in reality the carriage with the 2 cream-colored horses. For Jung, the sentiment of déjà vu is based on a foreknowledge in dreams that can also occur in the waking state. In this case, chance becomes highly improbable because the coincidence is known in advance. Jung tells the story of one of his patients whom he pulled out of a depression. The patient's wife put a tremendous burden on him which he was incapable of coping with. After a year of marriage, he fell into a new depression. Jung told him to come and visit him, but due to the influence of his wife, the patient did not reply back. At that time, Jung returned to his hotel at midnight after lecturing. He wrote, "At about 2 o'clock, I must have just fallen asleep. I awoke with a start and had the feeling that someone had come into the room. I even had the impression that the door had been hastily opened. I instantly turned on the light, but there was nothing. Someone might have mistaken the door, I thought, and I looked into the corridor, but it was still as death. Odd, I thought. Someone did come into the room. Then I tried to recall exactly what had happened, and it occurred to me that I had been awakened by a feeling of dull pain, as though something had struck my forehead and then the back of my skull. The following day I received a telegram saying that my patient had committed suicide. He had shot himself. Later, I learned that the bullet had come to rest in the back wall of the skull."
Stop it.
The best prayer to attract wealth begins when you
There
understand
you
that the
go.
strongest energy
You're
in
getting
the
an
universe
idea
is
of what
not
I'm
thought.
trying to explain to you. I'm going to stop it there. I really urge you to get Carl Jung's book and to check out these two sites, Eternalist and Third Eye Drops, because there's a lot of good stuff on there, and I've just played you some there, so I urge you to go check these guys out and listen to their stories about Carl Jung, synchronisation, and all the other good stuff that I'm trying to impart on you that I'm still learning myself. I urge you to do this, because if you are like me, as I've said, and you're trying to understand the universe and the spirit world and everything else, it's pretty much in that book. It's very, very, very insightful. So God bless everyone. Go check these guys out. I'm telling you, you won't regret it, and it'll open your mind and help you understand. And I wish you well and good luck, and let me know how you got on. And I'd like to hear what you think of their theories, if you want to put it like that, and their insight. I think they're pretty spot on, mate. As I say, I haven't had the book yet, but I've been listening to loads of stuff for a long time. I've been doing this for a long time. But I'm trying to go through it with you now. And Carl Jung is definitely a geezer you need to take heed of and listen to and read his book. God bless, good luck. I hope you found that interesting, and more to come. As I said, that wasn't my AI or anything. That was off a certain chap's channel. Like I said, the Eternalized. Make sure I said that correctly. Eternalized, yeah. You need to Eternalized. You need to check these guys out, and Third Eye Drop, because they speak about Carl Jung in great length and great details, and about his theories and what he's discovered in life, and like I said, about the universe and the strange place that it really is, and all the rest of it. So good luck, happy reading. Let me know how you get on. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about his theories and what he talks about and what these guys talk about. So good luck, God bless, speak to you soon.